You're listening to Veeam Partner Perspectives with Eric Doherty.
Welcome to the Veeam Partner Perspectives podcast. I'm Eric Doherty. Joining me today is Dan Lineback, Senior Solutions Architect at Red Hat. Dan, thanks for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Red Hat?
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, my background has been traditionally been in the data center and Azure cloud space. I came from the VAR industry, so I spent probably 17 years there as doing all of those roles that really develop you into kind of the senior solution architect role. So I was a pre-sales engineer. I was delivery guy. I delivered all the traditional platforms, hardware, networking, storage, and then probably the last couple of years I evolved into cloud. Back in April of 2020, I jumped over to Red Hat. So really extensive experience in the data center and cloud space, really helping customers move and migrate those workloads and do some of those application modernization projects. That's been my focus.
That's cool. And honestly, cloud, everybody, if you're not looking into any sort of cloud part of your career, I think you're missing out right now so it's
Agree. Yeah.
What I hear, the evolution, similar evolution to mine, data center products, desktop data center, cloud workloads, virtualization, all kinds of different, and then it just branches from there. So it's
I think
a healthy evolution of everything.
Right. And I think the cloud conversation, sometimes people get locked up on cloud as being only, your traditional hyperscalers. And really, cloud to me is more about focusing on how you can have that cloud-like experience, whether you're using your on-premise infrastructure or maybe you're doing a hybrid infrastructure. In either of those cases, you just want to have your infrastructure to be able to respond in the same way that the hyperscalers can give you that on-demand experience. And whether that's in provisioning workloads, managing those workloads, or backing up those workloads. So all of those things together really try to give that cloud native experience, regardless of where that workload is located.
Yeah, I can totally appreciate that. It's interesting too. I just had that same conversation with Dustin Albertson about cloud. Let's get the right definition of cloud. And I thought it was funny. You said almost the exact same thing, that cloud doesn't mean public cloud. It means so many more things. So tell me, in the world of Red Hat, what does cloud mean, and what sets Red Hat apart from the competition in the Linux distributions and things like that? So what makes you the one to go with?
Well, so kind of that's a loaded question. So let me address our version of the hybrid cloud. And really, we've been doing that. We've had that as a vision, and we've been working towards that vision as a company for over 10 years. So when you think about, and I'll bring that back to specifically, because, we will focus on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is our flagship operating system, right? But with our hybrid cloud vision, what we're really trying to do is say, regardless of where you're running that workload, we want that experience to be exactly the same with that workload. The way you manage it, the way you maintain it, the way you provision it, all of those things that you use to really have that business and development, DevOps, security, all of those things wrapped together. The experience is the same. You have the management platform and the tools to manage all those workloads and manage it exactly the same, regardless of whether it's in that private cloud, public cloud, on-prem, or in the edge, because we see a lot of edge use cases. So that's kind of our vision and what we've been doing. And we see the market adopting what our vision was and has been for the last 10 years. And you see the hyperscalers, you see the big service industry players, they're going in and they're adopting that same messaging. So I feel like we've had this messaging, we're ahead of the game, and really bringing it back to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. our flagship operating system, that's the great thing about it. If you deploy it in all these different environments, it looks and manages exactly the same. It has the same security footprint. It has the same. You can manage that. For example, as we know, not everybody is going to be x86, right?
Right.
We have power out there. We have little Indian. We have big Indian. So runs on power. It runs on top of IBM mainframe with our Linux One. So on Z platform 13 and above, it runs on ARM. So and we're certified in all of the major hyperscalers. So we work with the hyperscalers, and it's one of the number one deployed Linux distributions that you'll find from a subscription point of view that's deployed in the hyperscalers. So really, it's an open source project. Comes from Fedora that we've taken, and we basically we look at that, and we look at the overall distribution. We say, okay, what do we need to do to harden this thing, secure it, give it a life cycle, make it supportable, and then turn it around and give it to a business so that they can depend on that and have site reliability engineering and a security response team, and know that we're doing all the things to basically help them meet their SLOs for their business.
Yeah, it's interesting because you even said, I think, some of the key words that more and more people are worrying about as you go, especially the last few years, and that's the security and hardening, along with that consistency. And I think that, that story, if you can tell us a little bit more about that, I think that's something that just speaks to everyone. Obviously, we talk about hardened Linux repositories a lot, but you have so much more than just what our Linux repository can provide. So tell us a little bit about that kind of security that's in the Linux, the Red Hat operating system.
Well, if you go back, so security is a huge focus for us as a company, and it has been ever since probably our release 4. It was part of our everyday vernacular that security would be part of everything that we do with that operating system. That was in probably the 2005 timeframe that we actually started implementing security as part of a corporate initiative for everything that we do with that operating system. So it's built into all of our engineering. So if you fast forward now, if you think about it, we can take, and with a single command with SE Linux, we can secure and harden that operating system. By the nature of Linux, when you start talking about things like namespaces and C spaces, and how the kernel and the separation and PIDs and all of those things that go into how you isolate workloads, we've been doing that forever, and we're doing that in some kind of new and exciting ways. Like we've actually already, because quantum computing is coming on, right? And we've actually built in quantum tagging so that we're already trying to predict in the future what people are doing and what they're trying to do to break our operating system. So we have a lot of different ways to secure that operating system. I mean, we have certifications, we have NIST certifications, we have CGIS. I mean, we have lots of government certifications, MIL. We participate in the MIL OSS user groups. So it's a focus that we are very laser, aligned to on this operating system.
Yeah, that's and that's great to hear. And I mean, it's now built with security in mind, which makes it a great platform for our Linux hardened repositories and for the other components of our solution that can live on Linux distros. So you're familiar with what we can do with the hardened Linux repository. So it sounds like, given what you've done to create the hardening capabilities, it would actually be possibly easier to make a hardened repository on Red Hat than it may on some other distros out there.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I'll kind of throw in a couple other things. So obviously, here's kind of some things that'll help some of your listeners. So first of all, a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to use one of the other distros, one of the free distros, right? And that's great, but they go, because, well, I got to pay for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Well, actually, for those people that want to get their feet wet and get into it, we actually offer a developer's subscription that gives you access to 16 free instances that you can use on physical, virtual, or cloud instances. And so that's a way for you to kind of, some of the things that we talk about here about this hardened repository, if you want to go out and test and develop and really, validate what we're saying, you have the ability to do that with a no-cost edition of this. Now, it's not supposed to be used for production, right? It's for basically individual users, not for corporate users.
Sure.
But it is a way to kind of get in there and start working with that.
Well, that's a great combination with our NFR licensing, because most of our partners have some sort of a lab environment, whether they have it in their, in a home lab or in the company's lab. This would be a great addition to it to test a lot of different features, because not only do we have the hardened repository, but we just are coming out with the ability to do hypervisor level backup within Red Hat. So I think, taking advantage of that opportunity to build yourself a little environment so that you can become more familiar with these components is absolutely valuable.
Yeah.
So tell me, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree. I agree that, that's what really, I did Veeam for a lot of customers when I was with my old company. And when I saw the version 11 came out and I saw that, there was a hardened Linux repository, that really got me interested. And I jumped in and said, hey, let me see how hard this is or what I need to do. Because as we know, traditionally those repositories are running on NAS or Windows machines, right? So it's like, well, how hard is this? How hard, is it a Veeam problem? Is it a Red Hat problem? And the reality is very small set of skill sets are required. We have a GUI set up for RHEL, so it makes it super easy. It's very quick to install, set up, and then you would license that, or with the subscription. We call it a subscription because we don't do a license, but you would entitle it, and once it's entitled, you get all the updates, you get everything that you need, the patches, the CVs, etc. And it'll actually be up to date at time of deployment. It's not like you have to go back afterwards and say, oh, like a Windows machine, now I got to go and run through 2 hours of updates.
Yeah.
So out of the box, it's already going to be deployed and up to date. So that's the first great thing.
That's beautiful. So it's secure before you even think of putting it on the wire,
absolutely,
as opposed to having to put it on the wire to get it secure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other, some of the other things that people forget about is you have all this different hardware that's sitting out there. You have all these different clouds. You have all these different environments where nothing looks the same. And you don't want to be bound or vendor locked in. So if your favorite cloud today is AWS and tomorrow it's Azure, great. Red Hat Enterprise Linux is going to work exactly the same and manage and do all the same stuff that you're doing. And if you've deployed it on your HPE hardware, or you've deployed it on your Lenovo hardware, or you deployed it on your Dell hardware, Supermicro, that's part of the value of what we do is that we have this huge ecosystem of partners that certify our solutions on their hardware, software, and cloud platforms. So that's really a big benefit for customers.
Yeah, I don't. People need to not. When you told me earlier about being on the mainframe as well, because I run it on x86 and I have it running on ARM on Raspberry Pis, actually virtualized inside of Raspberry Pis with running VMware for ARM, the ARM Fling, and then I run it inside of that. But it's the same OS. If you know it one place, you know it the rest of the places. That's huge.
That's right. And part of something that really, I think, differentiates us from some of the other Linux distros. So I did a lot of managed services support in my previous lifetime. And part of the problems that we'd run into with large environments, and especially with the backup environments, was during the day you have, everybody's doing everything, and you typically, you might be running your backups, kicking them off, after business hours, right? It just depends on, the workload and what the SLA around that machine is, or what that workload is, right? Or application. And so now you throw all of this workload at this backup environment. And so it's running and churning all night long. Well, what happens, um, and those are pretty much 24/7 for these big shops, right? So what do you do if you need to deploy a Windows patch? It's probably going to be a reboot, right? So
Yeah, but if what you might get away a couple weeks without doing it, but eventually it's going to be big enough to require that reboot.
yeah, and in this day and age, really organizations can't wait weeks for a window to do that reboot, and then it could be quite a bit of time. So with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, you have the ability to live patch a lot of these vulnerabilities without having to take a reboot. And then there will be times where you will have a reboot, but very rarely. So they've really done a good job of trying to minimize or reduce the impact to operations. And so that's kind of another advantage that you have, because switching over to a Linux hardened repository versus a Windows repository is kind of giving you the option to have probably a bigger uptime than you would with, say, one of the traditional Windows platforms.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, as we've all seen, and even Microsoft, and I'm not, bashing on them because I used to work there and have made quite a bit of my career supporting their products, but um, there is a lot of surface there, no pun intended with Microsoft Surface, but there's a lot of surface to attack there that is tricky to shut off, even on a server. Even you get to core server, and that's still difficult sometimes to get everything locked in the way that you need it. Uh, that there's just an inherent advantage to running something like Red Hat.
Yeah. The other part that I wanted to mention, and by the way, it comes with the developer subscription. We have what's called Red Hat Insights, and so now you have this predictive analytic tool that basically we have a SaaS cloud platform. It's all encrypted in transit, in storage. So TLS 1.2 in transit, and then storage is encrypted. And where you can go in and take your Linux machines, your RHEL Linux machines, and actually look at a dashboard, see your security vulnerabilities, and then also see what performance or other issues are affecting that machine. And really, we're using over 10 years of our experience of collecting that data and turning it into actionable intelligence that can help a system administrator very quickly. What might have taken days down to minutes to be able to diagnose and figure out, what the solution is, and actually be able to do remediation on that machine also as necessary. So that's included in the RHEL subscription. That's part of our value that we're giving you. And so that's not something that any of the other vendors out there have. It's real-time data. It's got our engineering experience in this huge data warehouse over millions of machines, that's really being able to develop and give you that AI intelligence view of your environment for those machines that are running in that environment.
Well, that's what makes it a truly enterprise solution, is to be able, that's what people need, is the ability to centrally manage, quickly respond, and that's across any platform that's running it. So it's not limited to one, x86 or ARM. It's if it's running Red Hat, it can be managed and monitored through that.
That's exactly right.
That's awesome. Switching gears a little bit, the world is catching fire with containers.
Yes,
it's
it is.
it's the fastest growing area of computing, I think, right now, and we have some products that are addressing that. But tell me, what does container based computing look like in the Red Hat world?
Well, we're focused on our kind of flagship solution. So back in 2014, Kubernetes was released by Google, and immediately Red Hat jumped on that on the open source community. And we've been in there, and we're usually the number one or number two contributor to that open source community. We contribute our time, our talent, our engineering to make that open source project successful. And in turn, we take that and we have what's called Red Hat OpenShift. And that's our container platform. And it's really a complete platform. And so if you kind of think about, we often get questions about, well, I can just go out to Azure and deploy, AKS, right? Or I can EKS from AWS or GKS from Google. Well, the issues with that is that you might have the orchestration there in the containers, but you still need to be able to deploy all the other things that make it into an enterprise solution. So everything from the role-based access, the telemetry, the logging, all of the things that go into that platform to make it enterprise ready. We have enterprise security. We have enterprise the availability with our advanced cluster management and advanced cluster security. So again, using that hybrid vision, you're deploying those workloads anywhere, but you're still managing it, and you're having a consistent deployment experience with the advanced cluster management. So whether you're and a lot of times people forget about, it's really easy to provision things. Well, how do I easily rip it down, right? Because
Yeah,
that's the value of containers. So our platform is really, I think that's the market differentiator out there, is it's a complete platform. And so you have a consistent security deployment experience across all of those different environments that we've talked about.
that's great. And that it sounds like that's something then again to bring it back to the Veeam side of the shop, that then those containers that are deployed, if you have stateful data in them, Cast and K10 is a great solution for making sure that those containers are backed up. And another thing that actually gets missed a lot with that is for migration capabilities, um, above and beyond what the platforms provide if needed. We've seen that some of the success stories with that are around the ability when major versions change. It's sometimes faster to back up and redeploy through the backups as opposed to breaking it down and rebuilding it. I've heard of projects that went from months to weeks because of, or weekends, because of the ability to do that, restoring into a new version of the containers. Um, so
Yeah,
combine the two together, and you've got a best of breed solution for managing and protecting your
that's right.
container.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was reading this morning an article, and the author was she was talking about how there's like five flourishing skill sets and five kind of dying skill sets. And number one at the top was containers. So you can't
Yep.
avoid it. And so,
No, it's something that's you're going to be left on the roadside if you're not looking into it and you're in any sort of IT role right now.
yeah, and I think traditional virtualization platforms, and Veeam does a great job backing up, all of the hypervisors that are out there, including, the Red Hat virtualization. But where I see the market personally, in my opinion, where you see it going to is enterprises are saying, hey, this monolithic application model doesn't work for us anymore. We can't respond to consumer and business demands quickly. We need to get into containers. Well, the great thing is, with the cast in 10, it's giving you the ability to kind of match that same style of business strategic thinking, and it's putting you into that microservices architecture.
Yeah, it's interesting to excuse me. You mentioned that it is kind of the evolution of the original container. I guess was the VM. Um, but it's amazing how again you say that monolithic apps, but even the VMs themselves. First off, the thing was okay, you can run it on a smaller machine, and it'll be more agile, mobile to move from, you can bounce it from host to host quickly so that you maintain better uptime and availability and resiliency in your environment. Some of the VMs that are running on these hosts are just slightly smaller than the host they're running on anymore. So things need to be split out again. And it seems like the container-based solutions are the way to do that and really distribute. We're distributing workload in a way that we've never thought of before at this point.
I think, this is a good, for the listeners that are looking at this and they're going, okay, so how do I get started? What do I need to do? And so there's kind of two. Kasten 10, I'm sure, has some kind of, do you have an offering that people can look at if they're using something like OpenShift?
So
That
you can use it for free. You can download it and set it up, I think, for up to 10 containers and do backup. So you could set it up. You could set up your OpenShift environment and then run Kasten in that in the lab as well. And to learn about it, a little more promotion for us. Awesome hands-on lab series out at on Kasten's website, kasten.io.
good. Yeah. So that's great that you bring up because a lot of these technologies, for people that aren't used to, containers, we have a variety of ways that you can get up to speed. So maybe what you would want to do first of all is well, okay, I'm running RHEL. Let's go ahead and use Podman. And another benefit to using Red Hat Enterprise Linux is that we have a whole list of certified images that are out there that you can import into your environment. And you can find those if you go out to catalog.redhat.com. You can find all our certified hardware, the certified software, the certified containers, etc. So you can go out and you can browse and see pretty much everything that's out there. So that's one way. We have a 60-day subscription that allow you entitlement to go deploy it in your favorite workload environment. So if you're running VMware and you want to run it for 60 days, you can go deploy it there. If you want to go run it in your favorite cloud provider, we have user provision and IPI provisioned that you can set up and deploy in less than, depending on the environment, you can have a fully functional OpenShift environment with 3 control nodes. Those are replacements to masters, and 2 or 3 worker nodes in less than an hour, and be up and running and have a fully functional platform.
That's awesome. What a nice lab that creates for the individual or for a company to have in their arsenal there as they're learning for demoing. Show a breadth of knowledge, and really get people the opportunity to touch these things. So tell me a little bit. How could people that want to enhance their Red Hat skills, and I'm saying this very generally because it depends on which direction they're going, what can they do to get more education materials and get their skills up to speed on the different areas that you provide?
There's kind of 3 things. That's a great question, because I came over from, I was traditional hardware and I was cloud. And so Red Hat was relatively new for me in April of 20 when I came over. And so one of the areas that I focused on is we have free training on what's called Katacoda, where you can go in and you can do micro training. So you don't have to have a large, commitment of time. If you've gotten a developer subscription, you'll have full access to our documentation. And in there, you can see the install docs. You can see all of the different, installation docs, etc. So you're going to get access to that. And then if you are already a customer, we have ways for as a senior solution architect, I have the ability for certain customers. I'll go in and I'll set up. We actually have this system called the Red Hat Product Demo System, and it will deploy a full learning environment. And each student would have access to a dedicated environment. So in the case of OpenShift, We would have the exercises built out. We'd have everything that you need that you can follow through very easily and get your feet wet and use that and not have to worry about a shared environment. Usually, though, you work through one of our account reps or somebody like that so that we can, at least, because we're running those workloads on AWS in the background. And so we
Which means
just
they're
want to
costing
track.
you money if they're not in use.
Yeah, exactly. So we have short windows, 2 days max is the typical time frame. And typically, if it's somebody's first time, we like to have maybe an essay and just, run them through a class and put them through that. So, hey, if you got 5 or 10 users from your company and you want to get in there and you want to learn one of our solutions, just work through one of your Red Hat VARs or partners or whoever, and we'll get it set up and we can get you some good hands-on training.
That's awesome. And there's nothing better than, like you said earlier, about, you have the option for the larger classes, but to do it in small chunks. Everybody can come up with a half hour here and there where they can learn something new. And
Yeah,
everybody
exactly.
should, just
They
to
should.
try and learn one new thing a day. And those are great chunks to do it.
I mean, you have different levels of people, right? You have these guys, they're going to go out and they're going to do everything on their own. They don't want to they don't want to talk to a salesperson. They don't want to have anything to do with anybody. They just want to go out and figure it out on their own. And for that, go out and use our 60-day and go deploy it in your virtualization environment of your choice or your cloud environment of your choice. Some people, they want to kind of have a guided experience, right? And they want to have a little bit more hands-on. And then there's something in between. So we have something for every skill level, from advanced to, just a beginner starting out.
That's awesome. Hey, Dan, as we wrap up here today, what's one thing that you have, one late remaining thing that you have that you want people to remember as they go out and start looking at Red Hat as an opportunity in the field and start to increase their knowledge?
Yeah, just know that Red Hat is more than just an operating system. It's really an ecosystem that's backed by really a lot of solutions, and all of our solutions that we have out there are built on this. You got to think about kind of the house analogy, right? If you don't have a good foundation, then everything above that foundation really doesn't matter, right? And Red Hat Enterprise Linux is the foundation for everything that we offer. So for OpenShift, we use our Immutable Red Hat Core OS. For our Ansible automation platform, we use RHEL. So it's just not an operating system company, and we're being used by the global Fortune 500 and the airlines use us, the telcos and the banks, 100% on the global Fortune 500. So that, if they trust the solutions that are coming out of Red Hat in terms of what they're doing with that open source solution and how they're using it, that you can depend on it and rely on it too to help you with your business.
That's awesome. And use Veeam products to back up those solutions, because we have
Absolutely.
something that matches to just about everything you have there.
They're better together, a great better together story.
Absolutely. Dan, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been fantastic.
All right, Eric, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time and look forward to our next conversation.
Me too. Thanks.
This has been Veeam Partner Perspectives with Eric Doherty. Thank you for listening.